Welcome to another monthly thing online here. Today we're going to talk about Lightroom and the new remove tool and the AI generative feature that it has going for it. Working out of Lightroom Classic, it also works in the online Lightroom version. Not quite as well. They continue to keep the Classic doing things that the online doesn't. So you'll see the Classic tonight. Here in the develop module, let me close. It's still looking pretty much the same. So this is the new version that came out in June. So if you haven't upgraded since June or updated, you should do that. And we're working with the remove tool, which used to be called the healing tool, but it's the remove. Keyboard shortcut is tap the Q key, but I'm not going to show you all the keyboard shortcuts tonight. Just keep it simple. So we'll just click on the remove tool and it shows remove, and then it shows the 3 different modes, which we'll talk about. And you'll notice here it says early access. So Adobe is still working on the generative AI features, and they say it's not perfect yet. It probably is never perfect, but it's good enough that they're willing to release it. It follows suit with what they did with Photoshop and the generative AI. Probably the next release, which I believe comes out in October, November, might update to the full blown. It's working perfect or as good as they think it will. But one thing they request about the early access is provide them feedback. If something's not working, if you send them a note, they appreciate that, and they can use that for training the AI. And one thing Adobe says they do, which I believe them, is they don't scrape the entire internet for their generative AI. They only use photos that are in Adobe stock. So people who put photos in Adobe stock have signed off on that they can be used for whatever Adobe wants to use them for. They probably didn't realize that they're going to use them for this, but that's part of the game. So what generative AI is when you're in Lightroom, when you're deleting something, it is going to the internet, and it's looking at, in theory, millions of other photos that are similar to what your photo is, and the tones and the area that you're removing, and it's using the information from your photo that you're working on, plus, they say, millions of other photos to create to fill in that space that you're deleting. So in the old days, before June, you had content aware, which looked at your photo and used the pixels around where you were deleting to delete something. So they continue to have that available. So in the mode, the remove mode, so say like this power line going across here, if I just click and drag and highlight it, and if I want to make sure I get all of it there. So now it is just doing it in the good old content aware. And up until a few months ago, we thought that was pretty great, and it was. But I will show you what happens when we do it with a generative AI and how much better that is. So one thing that was always a problem with the content aware is, let me zoom in a little bit more here, or a lot more. See how this edge of the building is not straight? So that's because that is part of where we cloned. So if I turn that off, you can see that's part of what we cloned, and now it doesn't have a straight line there. So if you're looking really close, so I'm just clicking down here on the eyeball so I can essentially turn off what I just did. Now let off on the mouse, and we're visualizing the actions we just took. So all this, like this vertical line here, is crooked. this vertical line is crooked. This one's way off. This one's off. And we'll probably see that all the way through the image. There's gaps here. You know, I was pretty happy with this a few months ago. Let me reset this, and I'm going to zoom back out so you can see the picture. So to use the generative AI feature, we need to click on this box. And when we check that, the first time you do it, it will give you it'll pop up a box asking you to be okay with their terms of service. So you can read that if you want. I didn't bother. I trust Adobe, so I just clicked OK and went to work. So now if I highlight this area, let's just do the same area we did before, and I didn't draw any better than I did the first time, but I want to make sure that I'm covering all of it at least. And now it does a little bit different. It shows you the mask that it's going to work with. And if there's areas that you went way out of and you know it and you don't want to affect it, you can hold down you can click on the subtract button over here on the right. And now our cursor is going to erase mask as I click and drag. So say for some reason I wanted to keep the wire there. Okay, so I erased the mask there. So now all I have to do is click on apply, and it is going to go to the internet, and it will take a little bit of time. Seems to be the same amount of time every time I've done it, and it will erase that area. But it didn't this time because we left that gap in it. So I'm going to just reset it, and I'm going to do it again without that gap and highlight the area. And just go all the way over here. Now click on apply. And again, it's going to go to the internet. So you have to be plugged into the internet to do this. If you're working off a laptop and you're not hooked up to the internet, doesn't work. Okay. So now when I zoom in again, all these lines, we can't even tell where that happened. Those lines that were vertical, that were obstructed by the content aware one. So if we click on and off, we can see a little bit of funkiness going on here, but it's working pretty darn well. You'd never look at that and say there's something wrong, right? Let me zoom back out. So now if I want to finish off the job, get rid of that entire wire, again, I have to click on apply and wait for it to jump to the internet. If you're doing a larger area, it takes a little bit longer. If you have a slow internet connection, you're going to take a little bit longer. So when we zoom in again, let me move over here. You know, pretty clean, pretty darn clean. So the generative AI, let me get back up here. The generative AI uses a lower resolution for the fill than the photo, if it's a full res photo. So it is using a resolution of 1024 pixels per inch to fill in, which is what the generative AI in Photoshop uses. The new beta version that's out of Photoshop, which you can download and use for free, has doubled that up to 2048. So hopefully they'll do that. So if you're going to make a big print and you're removing a large area, it will show up as being lower resolution or just not looking as sharp. If you're doing things for the screen, you're probably okay. And if you're doing small areas like we just did, not a problem at all. One of the other things that it does is it has an object aware button. So if I click that, when I'm doing my masking, and I'm just going to move my mouse to make the brush size bigger. So I'm scrolling using the scroll wheel on my mouse, or a Mac mouse, just the touch. Or you can adjust the size by dragging over here, but I find it much better to be over here and seeing what I'm doing. So now if I don't have to be very careful at all when I'm doing the object aware, and now it's going to mask just that object, and it's going to leave a little extra space all around, which is what you always want to do when you're masking it. You always want to leave it a little bit of space, a little extra. You don't want to mask right up to the edge. So now if we click apply, it's going to go to the web. No more motorcycle. So again, I'm going to click down here in the lower left to turn off, to devisualize what we did, basically, and visualize it again. So it even added something down in here, thinking it needed to have something more than wall. So the object aware is pretty darn cool, because it means you don't have, you can really just be pretty sloppy with your masking. So I'm just clicking and dragging to highlight the area, and it didn't like the middle, so we can see that my cursor still has a plus sign, if you can see that. So I can add more mask to that. Click on apply, and Adobe is very nice. They give you little tips to read while it's generating. Boom, they're gone. So, what amazes me is they're drawing blocks in here using both my photo and photos off that they've sampled, and drawn lines in the blocks. The content aware, when I was doing it with that, sometimes it would just make a pure blotch area without any detail behind it. So it is a big step up from the previous versions. So if you happen to get a selection or a solution that you don't like, they offer you the choice of 3 variations. So I'm going to click here on the right under variations on the area, and click the right arrow, and it's going to give me a different variation. Click it again, and I'll get the 3rd variation. If I don't like any of them, I just click refresh, and it'll give me a whole new set. In Photoshop, when you do that, it saves the first set. In Lightroom, it doesn't. So if you like one of the first ones, stick with it. But here I'm going to click through the 3 new sets that it created, which look pretty similar. I like number 1 the best here. So you always have 3 variations you can try, and you can hit it again and hit it again until you get it the way you want it. Like I say, you can't go backwards on those variations. I don't know if that's something they'll add to. That's pretty handy in Photoshop to do it that way, is to go back and see what you've done before, and which one's better. But in this case, you can't do that. Okay, let me grab a different photo and show you some other things here. Okay, so a picture like this, say you didn't like that street lamp, which I kind of do. Oh, Cuba, yeah. So we're doing Cuba because I'm working on a Cuba trip for early March. So if you want to go to Cuba, I got a great guy working with me. Okay, so generative AI, the object aware, let's see what it does. Did a great job with the base of the post, but the street lamp is still a little off, missing there. So we'll just add a little bit more. Perfect. And we're going to click on apply. And there's a tip that even says you can refine the results afterwards. boom, that street lamp is gone, and it has rebuilt the wall behind it to show. Let's zoom in again. Let me. So you can see it added crud where there was a lamppost in it. Figured out how wide the lamppost would be. So something I see here that's a little funky is there's a branch growing out of nowhere up here. So we could either remove that, which is probably what I would do since it looked weird, or build it back in. But I did kind of like those branches up there, but now I've committed. So if I don't like that, I can just cancel it and I go back. And let me zoom back out and look at the 3 variations from this one. So that's variation number 2, a little different. Variation number 3 is a little different. So let me zoom in again so we can see the differences. Something I noticed really big is the base here in the 3 variations, how different that base looks. Now this one, that doesn't look right at all down there. Number 1, it does, but it added this blue thing back here. So if I don't like that blue blotch there, come in, highlight it, hit apply. There, now let's clean that up. It's not perfect at the base either. Let's see what happens. Sometimes if you smack it, I say smack it, do it 2 or 3 times in a spot like that, it will rebuild in something good. Let's get a variation on that. Actually, I like that one better. That one looks very realistic. That one doesn't look so good. So I'm going back going back to 1. Cool.
Hey, Loren, was that branch in your original photo?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, let's grab another photo here and I'll show you something else that we can do. So many times we have spots on our sensor and they can be hard to see. I have one right there that's a sensor spot. Now, if it's something that small, I am probably going to turn off the generative AI and just use the good old content aware to get rid of it. You know, against a clear sky like that, it does a great job. So I don't have to spend the time waiting for the generative AI. You know, there are still times when you just use the content aware and it works great. But a lot of times there are spots that I have trouble seeing. So we can visualize spots. So we click this checkbox here, visualize spots. We can adjust the contrast. So it'll show, I mean, basically it's showing outlines of things. So now I know when I zoom in again, let's zoom all the way. Let's just go big here. As I look across here, I've got spots all over the place. Now, if I'm just gonna be on the internet, these little ones probably aren't gonna show up. I'm just clicking and dragging on these spots. Let's come across. So I know in a clear sky that anything that looks like that is not good. So
And that's content aware that you're doing,
I'm just
correct?
doing content aware now.
Okay, thank you.
The generative AI would do the same, but you'd have to wait for it to do it. So if it's a complex, if the spot is on something complex, I have to admit, I looked for some photos today that had spots on them and I keep my sensor too clean. So I had trouble finding, but sometimes you'll get a spot on, you know, like somebody's face or in this area. And then you're better off using the generative AI than the content aware bill. So still have the old modes of heal, which the heal, let me just grab, well, let's say we want to get rid of that flag. So the heal uses some other portion of the photo. Let me show my tool overlays. So the heal clones something from another part of the picture. So here we can see where it's coming from is this blob here, and it's going to there. So it's basically a clone with a blend added into it. Sometimes it works great, sometimes not so much. I have the feeling I won't ever use this again now that they put the generative AI in, and wouldn't surprise me if it went away fast. I'm going to delete this one. And then there's the straight clone tool. Again, it will clone from a from place to a to place. So it'll, if you wanted to have the lighthouse again, you could clone that over and put it right there. And if in that actually, let me make it bigger. So if I made it the size of the lighthouse, now use the lighthouse to go there. Now suddenly we have two towers showing up. Base of it got a little messed up, but if you wanted to do that. So you have the ability to show your tool overlays, either always or auto or whatever tool selected. So and never, so you don't see them. So I usually have that on auto, and that way I can see where I've worked on my image, either with the generative AI or with the other tools. Okay, any questions? Okay. Okay, let me grab, let's go with this photo. So one thing you need to be sure to do in selecting your selecting your objects is if they're dropping a shadow down, you need to also select that shadow. So let's do a object aware of this car. And again, I'm just gonna go pretty quick around it. Missed that, probably didn't matter. Get that. Actually, I probably don't even need to get all the inside. It'll figure that out. Okay, so it's selected all around the car. That's good. Now, when I apply, it is going to, oh, look, it even told me I should get the entire object in shadow. When I don't get the shadow, all the shadow, it's assuming that I want it to replace whatever that object is with another similar object. So if I go through my variations, it's going to create some funky looking cars for us because we didn't delete the shadow. Okay, I'm going to reset that. Now this time I'm going to include the shadow. That part of the shadow too. Get it all. Okay, didn't get the shadow, so I'm going to work on it again. This time it will. Now when I hit apply, it is not going to try to draw another car in there because it knows now that we don't want a car, we want street, and we'll see how it builds the curve behind it. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. There's some funky stuff going on here, but it picked that up off of there, so it made it look like there was something flowing down the street even on us. So as I move my cursor over the photo, the outline shows up because I have my tool overlay on auto. If I put it on never, my tool overlay won't show up. So set that back so we know where we were. Pretty cool. So Zoom in a little bit more here again. So it will even take care of things like this window. Let's just highlight that and apply. And see how it does adding the colors back in. You know, that, yeah, not bad. Let's try the variations. That one looks more accurate, actually. Third one. So it again is using the data from my photo and also other photos of this building, which I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there, this mural, which is pretty cool in Havana, to get rid of that window. It's that clean, so turn it off, back on. It's really, really stunning. Okay. So again, if we say we wanted to get rid of the horse in the cart, which be kind of dumb because that's what the picture was about, but I've seen people do dumber things, so let's be dumb. Now, again, I'm purposely not getting all of the shadow to show you what happens when we don't get all the shadow. We missed a spot there. Okay. Hit apply. I actually did a pretty good job this time. Let me try the variations. Yeah. So since we didn't get all the shadow, it frequently assumes that you want something else in there that was outside of the picture, like that light pole coming all the way down. And if we zoom out, we'll see that makes for a pretty darn tall light pole, utility pole. So there threw some something else in there from who knows what the hell that is, right? So let's reset this and do it again. This time we're going to make sure we get all the shadow. And I should have unchecked select object, but I didn't. Or object aware, because that's what gets that. Okay. Apply. Boom. So this time it stopped the utility pole about where it looks like would be for me and made the whole road look pretty natural. You know, it does crazy things like adding in, turn this off, adding in shadows where it thinks shadows would fall because there was a shadow on this side from the tree. There's a shadow on this side, there's a shadow on this side, so there must be shadows in between, right? Look at the different variations. That one, it gave it less shadow. Excuse me, less shadow. And notice how the background is changing depending on the variations. And again, if you don't like any of them, you click refresh and then it'll do it again. And you get your choice. It's really stunning. Okay, save the craziest for last. This is a couple of the photographers who went to Cuba with me. Are either of them on tonight? If you are, I apologize for what's about to happen. So here's how smart this is. If we say, I don't want her to have sunglasses on, and I highlight the sunglasses, and I'm doing the object aware. Let's do it for both of them. Let's see how it works. So what is behind people wearing sunglasses? Yep. Behind the sunglasses are, we'll see if it does it. Eyeballs. Don't like that set. Here's a different set. That one's better. Oh, on the right, I don't like any of them. Let's hit refresh, have it do it again. For some reason, it's putting glasses on my friend to the right there. Hope she's not here. I don't hear her screaming at me, so is it? Yeah, it's not liking. So are those her eyes? No. Is that what she looks like? No. So I can't ever say, yeah, this is a realistic view. I bet she doesn't have glasses like that. Let me reset here and just do her. But just the thought that it can go in, you know, if you have somebody you don't know and you don't care what they look like, and you'd rather have them without glasses, it'll put their eyes back in. Oh, I really hope she's not seeing this. There we go. I mean, I find that to be just absolutely stunning.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the generative AI, when you highlight, whatever it is, that's basically telling the program that's what you want to remove.
Yep.
And then the object aware is telling it, I want something else there.
No, the object aware is automatically highlighting an object. So like the car back here. So even if I come out here and get real sloppy with my selection, it's just gonna grab the car. Now in this case, it also hit a little spot over here, but the object aware is just going for whatever object that you selected.
Okay.
You don't have to use it at all, but it's just,
okay.
it just makes it a little cleaner when you get sloppy.
Okay, thank
that
you.
way. So if I come out here, so see this time it's also coming out here, and let's say I didn't want to remove that arrow. You know, I can always go back over here, click on subtract, and erase that
Okay.
sloppiness. But the object aware will just do that basically for you. Thank you for asking that and clarifying that. Whoever was in the car behind me, you're now gone. I don't know if anybody, and if my Cuba clients are here. Oh, it gave us a different car. That's pretty funny. I must not have nailed all the shadow. Oh, and a car going the wrong way.
Loren,
Yes.
could you describe the tool overlay switch?
Yep. So wherever you created something, there's an overlay, meaning it shows you if it's always on, it will show you what you have masked off or what you have selected. So if there's multiple places that you've worked on the photo, there'll be an icon. See, there's an icon here and an icon there because we did it in two different places.
Right.
So as I move my cursor over that, and then I can refine afterwards by clicking on refine, and it will let me refine the mask, either add to it or subtract from it. Okay, so the wait, go ahead and cancel that. So the tool overlay, and that tool overlay shows up in all the masking tools too. So you can either have it turned on or turned off. So if you're using the brush mask or the graduated mask, that tool overlay option is always present for that too.
Okay.
Did that explain it?
Yes.
How about the folks on the pavement? Can it replace one or not the other? If you zoom in and highlight only one of them, this is what happens when you're shooting from a moving car. And yes, friends who I preach about tripod, I was shooting in a car and not using a tripod. So that's why it's soft back there. So yeah, I can get rid of one of them. If I highlighted them both, they both would be gone. So there's just one photo where I thought, will they get rid of all those power lines? And it took me about 3 times. I'm not going to spend our time doing that, but the answer was yes. With the generative AI, I had to turn off the object aware, so it wasn't trying to grab objects, but just by highlighting just these power lines, and if I didn't get rid of all of them in one whack, it didn't work. So it put some clouds back in. So I said I wasn't going to do it, and then I sit here and do it. But if I don't get rid of all the wires, come down and get that major one there. Let's just apply that and see what happens here. I see a spot I missed already, so it's gonna be mad at me because I missed a spot up there. So that's when we go back in and refine it. Yeah, see, it didn't like it all. So let's refine our mask. Okay. That I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to subtract a little bit. I nailed it. I went into the car here. I don't want it to be in the car. And I'm going to add a little bit more down here because I didn't get the base of it. Now let's see what happens. Actually, there's a wire there. I want to tell it to go away. And these wires out here might be throwing it off too, but we'll see. Heck, not loving that. So let's try another variation. More better. Nope. So what I would do is number 2 and then come back and hit on it again. Apply. And that's a lot of crap to get rid of. Yeah, we're getting close. So if we leave the tops of the clouds, it'll probably realize we want clouds and build some clouds back in for us. Oh, let's just try this. Oh, let's get rid of the tree while we're there. Now, are those the clouds that were really there? Let's see what they look like. No. Are they believable? Yeah. So that's the before, that's the after. Now, there's obviously some refinement that could still be done around here. But you can see that as a quickie, that's pretty stunning. Pretty stunning. So that's pretty much all there is to it. It's pretty simple. You can play with it. The beautiful thing of Lightroom is you're not working on your original. You're working on a thumbnail they created, so you can't damage your photo. You can't ruin your photo. You can always go back to, you can always reset it. And so my suggestion is to, if you have something in here in your photo that you want to remove, I would do it first thing before I did much processing, especially if you thought this might ruin my photo by not being able to get it out. So before I did my processing, I'm doing my removal work. There are still things that Photoshop does much better, but since we have it right here in Lightroom, we don't have to jump over to Photoshop to do that. So it really speeds up the workflow by not having to jump over to Photoshop to get rid of things. The generative AI there is magnificent. The biggest difference here is this removes something and it will replace it with something else. You can't control what it's replacing it with. In Photoshop, you can. So if we wanted to tell it to have 16 geese flying through the sky, we can do that in Photoshop. We can't do that in Lightroom. All we can do is remove things, and we can't, we can't add a dog walking on the street here in Lightroom, which we can in Photoshop. So that's the main difference. It's truly just a remove tool, but it is extremely powerful, and it is going to be more powerful when they come out with full release rather than the early access. Any other questions?
If we're working in high ISO, would you do your noise reduction first before you did this, or after?
It doesn't matter a whole lot. I might do that first because it's going to create a copy of it. If you're using the denoise part, it's going to create a new DNG. So you might do that first just to make sure that looks the way you want it to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So somebody's asking, does this significantly reduce the need to go into Photoshop? Yeah, it does. It really does. Like I said, unless it's, super major reduction. I don't do a lot of, I don't do a lot of combining photos and things like that in Photoshop. I have the skills, but it's just not my style for my photos. So I'm, before, I always said I did 75 to 80% of my work only in Lightroom. This is going to increase it probably 10% because I don't have to jump over to, if I have a wire or even a person to get rid of. As long as my area is not too big and I don't have to worry about that lower resolution for that area if it shows up, which, as you zoom in, you'll see the difference.
I got a question. If you have several water spots, say you're shooting on a boat or something or on the water, and would you still use the Lightroom, or would you go to Photoshop and edit those out?
I would start in Lightroom. I would see what it does. The weird thing about water, especially if you have beads of water on your lens, it creates just a weird distortion. So you need that generative AI to rebuild that, and it's this would be the starting place. If it's extreme, you might have to go to Photoshop to do a little bit more detailed work.
And would you use a clone tool in Photoshop, or
No, I'd use the remove tool.
use the remove tool?
Yeah, with the
Okay.
generative AI as part of the remove tool in Photoshop.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Next month, we're going to talk about focus modes on your camera. So that'll be the first Thursday of September. It's on my website, and also if you're on Meetup, posted it on the meetups. So join me for that. That'll be a lot of fun too. Other questions here? Okay, well, thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Lauren.